Welcome back to the Bible Simplified, and this is the section where we're going to do the book of James. Now, we're not going to read a whole chapter every day. I'm actually going to start with chapter 1, verse 1, and I'm going to stop every couple of verses when it gets to kind of the end of a section. James is packed with so many simple truths. It's probably my favorite book of the Bible because there's so much in such a small space. And so in James, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple of verses, and then I'll stop and I'll give some commentary on it and kind of explain it so that you understand. I am reading from either the KJV or the NIV throughout this entire section. And so if you have not downloaded the Bible app and you want to follow along, absolutely get YouVersion Bible. You can find them at thebible.com, or you can find them on the Play Store under YouVersion Bible app, and or on the Apple Store, the Amazon Store. They all have the Bible app version. So if you want to follow along, absolutely do that. So we're going to talk about the Bible Simplified, and we're going to start with James 1, verse 1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. So first of all, you need to understand that the book of James is actually written specifically to the Jewish people. So when you know that, you need to take into account that he's talking to people who already understand the essence of God. They already accept the Old Testament as they're part of what their lifestyle is and their Jewishness. And of course, he is talking to Jewish people who are Christians, but he's talking to them with an understanding that they already have this religious background behind them. They already know all these things about religion. They already know all these things from their Judaism, from growing up, etc. So he's specifically speaking to the Jews here, and to those who are scattered, though, all across the world. And what makes them very interesting is that the Jews who were scattered all across the world did not have synagogues necessarily to go to. They often banded together into each other's homes if they could. Sometimes these people were just all over the place, and they were very small, not even actual official synagogues they were meeting in. Sometimes they were just meeting outdoors and finding spaces where they could gather to read James' book that he sent to them, or in this case, his letter, because that's how the New Testament, a lot of it is written, is all the epistles, as we refer to them. They are actually letters to various things. Well, this was written to anyone who was a Jew and to anyone who was scattered outside of the Jewish homeland of Israel at the time. And so he says to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. He's like, hey dude, what's up? Hello. And so he's like walking into church and saying hi to everybody. So let's move on. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. This one is really hard. So first of all, the verse 2 here says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. That means when you fall into temptation, don't consider it to be the worst thing in the world. What? Like, don't people judge us when we fall to temptation? We give in to something? I mean, let's talk about something really small. Like, okay, you had a New Year's resolution and you weren't going to have chocolate anymore. And then somebody made that amazing batch of brownies and you had one and you're like, oh, this is so bad. I shouldn't do it. That's not even really a sin, because unless you've pledged not to do that before God, it's not even really a sin, but we feel shame and we feel guilt. And here James is telling us, no. Don't feel shame and guilt when you fall into temptation. No, make it an opportunity for your faith to work out, because then your faith can step in and say, I recognize that my faith is the only reason that I'm going to be able to get out of this temptation. My husband struggles because for over 50 years, he smoked, well, over 40 years at least, 45 years, about almost 50 years, he smoked cigarettes. From the age of 10 is when he had his first cigarette. And so for him, cigarettes were a really, really big, strong problem. About a year and a half before we got married, we were engaged, but we weren't married, and we were talking over things, and he decided to give up his cigarettes because he didn't feel it was right for him to put a financial burden on our then to be soon young family, especially when he first moved to the States. He wouldn't be allowed to work until he got his green card, which in his case went very quickly, but can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years to get a green card. And he just felt that wasn't fair for me to have to work and pay for his cigarette habit. So he quit. However, instead of completely quitting, because that was a little bit too hard for him, he moved on to having a vape. And so he started smoking a vape, which was significantly less money. And he would also have an occasional cigar. Well, after years went by, his nicotine level on the vape went down. And finally, he was able to quit the vape. But even just quitting the vape was really difficult because there was something about that hand-mouth motion that was just really, it was part of his addiction for sure. Even now, he still struggles with this addiction. And what this says right here in James is, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into temptations. When you give into that temptation, it shows you an opportunity for your faith. When your faith is tried, it can work out patience in you. It means that you can actually build your faith and build your faith with some patience. Because let patience, and verse 4 it says, but let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Now, let me make this really clear. James is not saying that he expects you to be perfect. What he's saying, though, is that the only way that we know if our faith is actually working is if we are being tempted. Because if we're being tempted, and sometimes we're going to give in when we're tempted, we're not denying that. And we shouldn't necessarily feel shame about it. What we should feel is, this is an opportunity for my faith to step in, and the patience and the work of my faith to step in and take over. Moving on to the next verses, it kind of goes together with this. It says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Now, some of those verses are a little bit more difficult to understand. Obviously, we know what wisdom is. And it says, if you lack it, ask God for it. And I will tell you that if you ask God for something, He will give it to you, or He will allow circumstances in your life that work that into you. I, a few years ago, started praying that I would be able to work in a particular characteristic in my life. And I did not realize that, and you have to be really careful when you ask God for something, because you don't always know what it's going to take to root out that sin that's in your life. And you may go through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, but it says right here that for any of you who lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally. I mean, He's giving as much of it as you can take. So if you can take it, He'll dish it out. He'll give it to you. And he says, and upbraideth not. Now, upbraideth, that's a little bit of a old English word there. Upbraideth not means basically it's not going to be, he doesn't hold back from it. So it means he doesn't like, if I go to a different version, it says, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. So God doesn't judge you if you say, God, I lack wisdom, or I lack patience, or I lack self-discipline, or whatever it is that you're asking God for. God doesn't judge you for being deficit in wisdom. He doesn't say, oh, you're asking me for wisdom because you're just like not very good. You're not very smart. You're not very wise. You're making bad choices. Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty shameful. No, it says He's not going to upbraid us. He's not going to fault us. He's going to just embrace us and give us it liberally, and give us the trials and the tribulations that are going to be necessary for us to build wisdom in our life. So it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But, and there's something I learned a while back, that basically when you're speaking and you say something, people seem to ignore everything you say before the but and only listen to what you say after the but. So here's the but from James. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. Okay, so if you want to ask God for wisdom, you got to ask it in faith, and you got to stay steadfast and keep asking Him for wisdom. He's not going to give it to you if you're going to wishy-washy, go back and forth and waver. It says, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Meaning it can go any which way. It can just do anything that it wants, and it can just go back and forth and wishy-washy, and oh my goodness. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea. Let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. Look, you ask for wisdom one day, and you ask for this the next day, and you ask for this the third day, and you're not focused on what you know you need to make your life and to make your spirituality grow. God says, don't ask for wisdom and then just think, oh, I'm going to get wisdom and then I can go on and do something else. Like it's going to be something instant. No. Be steadfast. Don't waver. Don't think that you can ask for wisdom and just, be wishy-washy about it. Let not that man think he's going to receive anything of the Lord, because it says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So if you ask for wisdom, but then you go out and you do something really foolish, and you know it's foolish, and you go ahead and you practice foolishness, God's not going to give you wisdom, because he's saying, look, you're double-minded. You can't decide, do you want to have wisdom or do you want to have foolishness? You keep going back and forth between them. Which one is it that you want? And so he says, ask in faith for wisdom. And so that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And if you're going to ask for something from God, make sure you ask, make sure you don't waver, make sure you stick to it, make sure that you don't go back and forth, be a double-minded man. And that's really kind of what that whole section about. It also goes on to say, let the brother of low degree, in verse 9 we're picking up, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. So basically, when somebody is really low, not only should they rejoice in the fact that God has lifted them up, is we should also, as other Christians around them, we should rejoice that God has lifted somebody up from the depths. And he says, but the rich in that he is made low. So those who are rich should also rejoice when they're made low, or they're made humble, or they are when they are brought to humility, because humility and wisdom, those are valuable things. And if a rich man becomes humbled, it's still great, because God will use that regardless. So somebody who's of low degree gets exalted, we should rejoice. Somebody who is rich and is made low, we should rejoice. And they should rejoice. And if we are the one who is rich and is made low, we should rejoice. Because as a flower of the grass, he shall pass away. Because God's saying, look, richness, lowliness, these up and downs of our economics, these up and downs of where we are, those aren't the things that matter. Those things all pass away. Some people are very rich and then they're not very rich. Some people are not very rich and then they're rich. And some people only get to middle class and then up and down. And God says, look, don't worry about that. Those are the things that pass away. It's not like you're going to take your wealth with you when you die. He says, because it's a flower of the grass, he shall pass away. For the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. A beautiful flower comes up, but it's only there for a short time. I mean, I have a rose bush in my backyard, and whenever it blooms in the spring, or in the early summer usually, because I prune it in the spring and then it blooms in early summer, it's like, it's beautiful, but 2 weeks later it's gone. Because the sun comes up with a burning heat, which makes the flower open, and it's gorgeous and it smells amazing, but then it withers and it goes away. And the grace of it, the fashion of it, it goes away. So what you look like on the outside is not nearly so important as the wisdom that you should have inside, the wisdom and the humility. That's what James is talking about in this passage. So also said the rich man fade away in his ways. And we're going to stop right there for today. And that's kind of where I'm going at with this, is that right now I shouldn't be focused on whether I have riches or don't have riches. I shouldn't worry about the temporariness of this life. What I should be concerned with is, am I asking God for wisdom? Am I asking God for the things that I really truly need? And look, I'm not downplaying if you are homeless or you have nothing. I'm not downplaying the need for physical well-being. I'm not downplaying that, but I am saying that, you know what? If you have wisdom, then all those other things, God takes care of them. In another passage of scripture, it talks about God taking care of, if he cares for the sparrows, how much more is he going to care for you? And the things we should be seeking from God are those things that are eternal. And when we fall into temptation, we should use that as an opportunity to exercise our faith and work out our patience so that we can gain wisdom, because those are the things that are really going to bring us value. So thanks for joining me today, and hopefully this has been helpful to you. And next lesson up, or next section up, will be James, starting in verse 12. Talk to you later.